The secretary to the state government of Enugu State will be joining us live, and he's Professor Hidiebere Onyia to speak more on the ambitious target of the state government to move its economy from a $4.4 billion to $30 billion. Very warm welcome to Newsnight, Prof. And it's a very tall order from $4.4 billion to $30 billion. What are those resources, apart from the human resources, that could help accelerate that for Enugu State?
Good evening. Thank you so much. I think initially when you sit back and think of the amount of money projected in the governor's growth target, it seems a bit overwhelming for people that are used to thinking about economic growth across a normal trajectory. So what we have sat back to think about is, in Enugu State, what are some of the key areas we have comparative advantage? And we've looked at it ranging from our agricultural space to our technology space. What we try to do is to create, for instance, within our agricultural space, take out a clear assessment of the land space we have by creating a land bank ranging from 100,000 to 300,000 hectares of land. Areas we have comparative advantage. For instance, in areas where you see cassava in our bioethanol project, we're also looking at cotton, which we have about the best yield in areas of Kano, in Enugu State. We're also looking at other areas, but we're not looking at agriculture just from the produce point of view. We're looking at it across the whole value chain, the processing, and that is going to be tied to our export corridor, because we do also recall that on the 1st of September, during our investment summit, we set out project pipelines of close to $2 billion. And the whole idea was to now give people an idea that this government is not a government that is dependent on FAG, but is going to look through some of the key projects that we have that have potentials towards bankability. So what we did was set this out at the initial stages now to curate them towards now speaking to potential investors in our April summit. But what you notice is that since after that meeting, we've now had interest in pre-feasibility support from development partners, international finance institutions. We've also had interest from domestic banks and also from development partners to help us from ideation to the different processes, pre-feasibility, outline business case, to a point where we can say, yeah, we are ready for bankability and having the type of conversations we need to have. So we're not looking at growth from a normal point of view. That's why you hear things in Enugu like disruptive innovation. So we're sitting down saying, if we're going to create a system in Enugu State where all the key aspects of the value chain are actually value added, what are the key things we need to put in place? So you said apart from the human resource, but we also know that it takes a team, a very strong team that will be able to think through this whole process, from how we identify projects that are bankable, to how we open up our deal room, to how we engage with businesses, like how we build that ease of business structure in Enugu State, where people feel like Enugu is a safe place to invest, to the investment in security. As you've noticed, that the earlier issue we had in Enugu of people sitting down at home on Monday is no longer pertinent. Now, Enugu State is clearly focused on productivity. So we're approaching this from multiple dimensions, but one thing that is clear is that there's a plan, there's a strategy, and more important, we've now begun to communicate to people the Enugu that we think they need to envision, the Enugu of the future. And we believe that in doing that, the mindset that was initially prevalent, which is we wait for Abuja to be able to send money every month before we begin to think of critical growth plans, will no longer be the case because the government has gone out.
All right, Prof. I was just coming to that. I was just coming to that aspect because all that you've been saying, government is going to do this. The government has. You have good cotton yields, cassava. You didn't talk about the cashew nuts and the rest. The manufacturing sector. How is the Enugu state government going to help bring that to life? In the time past, we used to hear of Anamco, the Anambra Motor Manufacturing Company. There is nothing like that again. The coal city was named because of the abundance of coal in Enugu, and we see a lot of illegal mining in Nigeria. Is the government seeking partnership with genuine investors to come and redevelop the coal industry in Enugu? And thirdly, is the government going to be, collaborating with PRODA, for example? It's a federal government agency, project development agency, which is an engineering, manufacturing, or fabricating agency. Prof?
Yes. Yes, the plan we have first is to de-risk the investment space. This is very important. And we have also gone into identifying what were the reasons for these companies, the ones you've mentioned, Anamco, the rest of them, to leave Enugu in the first place. And what we're trying to do now is to ensure that Enugu becomes an area where investors feel comfortable, where the policies that guide our engagement, the rules of engagement between us and investors, they're clear. It shows a respect for contracts, but more important is that we provide opportunities to de-risk areas that these investors feel a level of concern around. You do know that, as the governor will always say, investors or businesses are not Santa Claus. So they don't come to give money when they don't see a clear path to return on investment. So for all these companies that left, we have a ministry now that's focused on investment. So it's the Ministry of Trade, Investment and Industry. And the focus of that ministry is to begin to look at our moribund assets and identify the key areas where these companies may have encountered challenges. Those in the agricultural space, those in the manufacturing space, we're engaging them very directly. One thing also that we've done is to begin to push policies that will support this. For instance, the new electricity law, which was signed in a couple of days ago by His Excellency. The whole idea is that investors are not going to come if there's no clear assurance to quality and reliable power. So for us to be able to attract new generation assets and also new generation companies, we need to be able to create the enabling environment where they feel like the laws, the policies are aligned to be able to support that industry. So we've also noticed that a few of the key issues that happened was people feeling that the government is not very clear in its support for new entrants. So we're addressing that for new entrants coming into Enugu. We are going to make sure that the ability to get a certificate of occupancy is within 48 hours. We've gone ahead also to ensure that our administrative process is clear and streamlined, where e-governance is the mode of administrative processes in Enugu. So the key things that will stop investors from coming in, we're addressing it through policy and the right human resource. The things that also affected companies to, older companies that had left, we're engaging them directly through the manufacturers, through the local chamber of commerce, to identify clearly what we need to do to support them. So it's a holistic process. It's not just one.
Yes,
focused on an agenda.
Very holistic indeed, the way you've outlined it. Policy, policy, policy. Nigeria is never short of it. Tell me if the governor, Umba, has signed the electricity bill, right? Is Enugu State going to tap coal to generate electricity for its people and its industries?
So we're looking at hybrid models. Coal will be one of them. Renewable will be one of them. Thermal will be another. You do know that Enugu sits across a gas corridor. So we're going to have quite a bit of investment opportunities for captive generation in that area. We have a large coal resource pool here. Enugu State is engaging through the Ministry of Trade, Investment and Industry, driven by special purpose vehicles, SPVs, that are going to be our front, so to speak, to engage with private investors. So it's not a state-owned process where people get nervous that when governments leave, that contracts will not be respected. But it will be through a special purpose vehicle that will engage investors and those that are willing to participate in our coal to power projects. So it's going to be across the board. Our data management system will run, mostly our plan now at design is to run it using a renewable energy model through solar farms to be able to generate those 2-3 megawatts up to 10, depending on the capacity that is needed. So we're looking at a blended model, and we're also conscious of the climate concerns. So we're looking at ways to ensure that everything we do has a climate awareness to it, reduce our carbon footprint. In that way, Enugu is able to attract climate finance also to address some of our infrastructure needs.
All right, Prof. I'm so sorry. We're going to stop it here now. I think you've outlined the major policy thrust on how to develop Enugu and generate $30 billion. I don't know the time limit, whether within a 4-year period, but the people and Nigerians will be watching and update and apprise you if that was achieved. Professor Hidiebere Onyia is the Secretary to the Government of Enugu State.